They had always underestimated us. Even as we reached for the stars, they looked down on humanity with dismissive scoffs and condescending smirks. Such primitive beings, they would say, their crystalline bodies shimmering with what I could only interpret as arrogance. Still using metallic hulls and chemical propulsion. But that was their first mistake, assuming that tradition meant weakness. I remember standing at the observation deck of the Lunar Command Center, watching as the last pieces of our secret fleet came together in the shadowed craters of the far side. Captain Sarah Chin, my commanding officer, placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "Lieutenant," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 20 years in space, "what do you see out there?" The vacuum of space stretched before us, punctuated by the gleaming hulls of what looked like ancient Earth vessels, designs that hadn't been seen in centuries. Wooden-appearing sides, tall masts reaching into the void, and solar sails that shimmered like cloth in the starlight. To any alien observer, they would have appeared as mere replicas, museum pieces built by a species clinging to its past. But appearances can be deceiving. "I see our greatest deception, ma'am," I replied, unable to hide the pride in my voice. 3 years of secret construction, countless sleepless nights, and technology so advanced it looked primitive, all coming together in what would soon be humanity's masterstroke. The alien coalition had given us an ultimatum: submit to their guidance, accept their protection, or face isolation from the galactic community. They claimed it was for our own good, that humanity was too young, too reckless to be trusted with advanced technology. Their warships hung in high orbit, a constant reminder of their technological superiority. What they didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since we first detected their approach 50 years ago. Our scientists and engineers hadn't been idle, but instead of building obvious warships, we had done something unprecedented. We had hidden our most advanced technology inside vessels that looked like they belonged in Earth's age of sail. The quantum cores were disguised as wooden masts, the plasma cannons concealed within what appeared to be ancient bronze artillery, and the neural interface systems hidden beneath planks that seemed to be made of oak, but were actually metamaterials thousands of times stronger than steel. Even the crew's quarters were designed to look primitive, while housing technology that would make our observers' crystalline forms crack with envy. "Status report from engineering, Captain," my comm unit chimed. "All systems are green. The fleet is ready for final activation." Sarah nodded, her expression serious but her eyes twinkling with anticipation. "Send the signal. Operation Wooden Horse is a go." As I transmitted the activation codes, I couldn't help but think about how fitting the name was. Just like the ancient Greeks had used a seemingly harmless offering to hide their true strength, we had built a fleet that played right into our opponents' prejudices. They expected us to either submit or fight back with obvious force. They never imagined we would think so far outside their technological box. The first signs of movement caught my eye as the fleet began to rise from the lunar surface, solar sails unfurling like the wings of ancient galleons catching an ethereal wind. Above us, I knew the alien observers would be watching, probably laughing at what they saw as a pathetic display of outdated engineering. Let them laugh. They would soon learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in our technology, but in our creativity, our ability to innovate, and our talent for turning expectations against our adversaries. As the fleet moved into formation, I couldn't help but smile, knowing that we were about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. But none of us could have predicted just how far our deception would take us, or the price we would pay for our ingenuity. The first sign that something was wrong came from our long-range sensors. The alien fleet had shifted formation, their crystalline ships catching the sunlight in ways that reminded me of sharks circling their prey. They had maintained their position above Earth for months, but now they were moving, and not in the way we had anticipated. "Lieutenant, analyze that movement pattern," Captain Chen ordered, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The image showed thousands of alien vessels, their formations creating complex geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. It was beautiful in a terrifying sort of way. "They're creating some kind of energy web," I reported, running the calculations through our systems. "It looks like they're trying to establish a containment field around our entire solar system. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just here to pressure us. They were planning to cage us. The captain's expression hardened. They must have detected something. But what? She turned to the tactical display, where our fleet of wooden ships continued their seemingly harmless maneuvers. To all outward appearances, we were still just running drills with replica vessels, playing at being a spacefaring civilization. That's when we received the transmission from Deep Space Station Beta. The message was brief but chilling. They know. Not what, but they know something's coming. Ancient records recovered from their network suggest they've seen this before. The revelation sent a ripple of tension through the command center. Humanity wasn't the first species to try hiding advanced technology behind primitive appearances. Somewhere in the galaxy's vast history, another civilization had attempted something similar. And the crystalline beings remembered. How much time do we have before their containment field is complete? Captain Chen asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The calculations appeared on my screen, and I felt my throat tighten. 3 hours, maybe 4. After that, nothing gets in or out without their permission. I paused, checking another reading. But Captain, there's something else. The energy they're using. It's familiar somehow. It matches some of the frequencies we discovered in those ruins on Mars. The ruins had been our first real breakthrough, discovered 15 years ago beneath the red planet's surface. They had contained technology far beyond our understanding, but with one peculiar characteristic. It all looked like it had been designed to appear primitive, just like our current fleet. "Sound general quarters," the captain ordered, "but maintain our current appearance of running standard drills. If they know something's coming, but don't know what, let's use that uncertainty to our advantage." As the quiet alarm spread through the fleet, I watched our ships continue their deliberate dance. Each vessel was a masterpiece of deception. The wood-grain patterns on their hulls were actually quantum-entangled sensor arrays. The brass fittings housed artificial intelligence nodes more advanced than anything the aliens had ever encountered. Even the crew's period-accurate uniforms contained emergency systems that could rival our observers' most advanced protective technology. But our greatest advantage wasn't just technological, it was psychological. We had spent decades studying our observers, learning their patterns, their prejudices, their blind spots. We knew they saw humanity as young and impulsive, unable to appreciate the value of patience and planning. They would be looking for obvious signs of rebellion, not this careful game of misdirection we had been playing for years. As I watched the alien containment field slowly taking shape around our solar system, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were all actors in a play whose script was written ages ago. The ruins on Mars, the aliens' ancient records, our fleet of impossible ships, it all connected somehow, but the full picture remained frustratingly out of reach. The next hour unfolded like a chess game played in slow motion, with pieces moving silently through the void of space. Our fleet maintained its charade of antiquated maneuvers, while the alien containment field grew steadily stronger. But beneath the wooden veneer of our ships, systems hummed with power that would have made our observers' crystalline forms vibrate with alarm if they could detect it. "New data from Mars base," announced our communications officer. "They finished decoding another section of the ruins. Sir, you need to see this." The holographic display shifted, showing symbols that seemed to swim before our eyes. They were identical to markings we'd found etched into our ship's quantum cores, markings we'd assumed were mere decorative elements meant to enhance our vessel's historical appearance. Captain Chen leaned forward, her face illuminated by the shifting symbols. "They're not just markings," she breathed. "They're activation keys. The entire fleet, it's meant to work together, to resonate in a specific pattern." She turned to me, her eyes wide with understanding. The ancient civilization that built those ruins, they weren't just hiding their technology. They were hiding something bigger. A sudden alert blared through the command center. The alien fleet was moving again, their crystalline ships forming new patterns above Earth. Their containment field was nearly complete, but something about their formation had changed. They were no longer just trying to cage us. They were preparing for combat. "They've detected the energy signatures from the ruins," I reported, watching as our sensors picked up increasing activity from their fleet. The activation of the cores must have triggered something in their ancient warning systems. The deception was failing, but perhaps that had been inevitable. What mattered now was whether we could execute our plan before they could stop us. Captain Chen's voice carried across the command center with calm authority. Signal all ships. Begin the resonance sequence. Whatever those ancient builders left behind, it's time we found out what it was meant to do. She paused, then added quietly, and hope we were right about which side they were on. As the orders went out, our fleet began to move with new purpose. The seemingly decorative patterns on our ship's hulls started to glow with an inner light that had nothing to do with reflected sunlight. The quantum cores, hidden within what appeared to be wooden masts, pulsed in perfect synchronization. The aliens reacted immediately. Their ships descended like a swarm of angry insects, energy weapons charging. But they hesitated, clearly uncertain about what they were facing. Our vessels still looked like primitive replicas, even as they began to arrange themselves in a formation that exactly matched the patterns we discovered in the Martian ruins. Energy readings are off the scale, I reported, watching as my instruments struggled to make sense of what was happening. The resonance is building, creating some kind of interface. The space between our ships began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But in the vacuum of space, such distortions shouldn't have been possible. That's when we heard it. A sound that shouldn't have been able to exist in the airless void. A deep, reverberating tone that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Our wooden fleet began to shine like newly forged metal, the disguise falling away as ancient powers awakened. The alien fleet froze in their approach, their crystalline forms reflecting the impossible light of our transformation. In that moment, I realized they weren't just surprised, they were afraid. They had seen this before, and whatever happened next had been burned into their species' memory for countless generations. As the resonance reached its peak, Captain Chen gripped her command chair, her knuckles white. "Whatever happens next," she said, her voice barely audible above the rising tone, "remember that we chose this. We chose to believe that humanity's path forward didn't have to be the one they tried to force upon us." The light from our ships grew blinding, and in that brilliance, I caught a glimpse of something vast and ancient stirring to life around us, something that had been waiting patiently beneath the surface of reality itself. The light that engulfed our fleet wasn't just illumination. It was a key unlocking something far more profound. As my eyes adjusted, I saw that the space between our ships had become different. The stars seemed to bend and twist, creating patterns that human minds were never meant to comprehend. But what truly stopped my breath was what lay beyond those distortions. Multiple contacts. I called out, my voice cracking as the sensor readings flooded my screen. They're coming through from somewhere else. Hundreds of ships, thousands, all matching the design elements from the Martian ruins. Through the command center's viewport, we watched in awe as vessel after vessel emerged from the twisted space, each one bearing the same wooden appearance as our own fleet, but on a scale that dwarfed anything we had built. The alien coalition's reaction was immediate and unexpected. Their crystalline ships began transmitting on all frequencies, not in their usual measured tones, but with something that sounded almost like panic. The gardeners return, the message repeated in every known language. The cycle begins anew. Captain Chen's eyes narrowed as she studied the emerging fleet. "The gardeners," she whispered. "Lieutenant," cross-referenced that term with the ruins data. But before I could respond, our ship's quantum cores pulsed in unison, and knowledge flooded into our neural interfaces, knowledge that had been waiting for this exact moment. We weren't the first civilization to hide advanced technology behind primitive appearances. We weren't even the first to discover the ruins on Mars. We were simply the latest in a long line of species who had proved themselves worthy by choosing innovation and deception over brute force. The gardeners, it seemed, had been testing civilizations for millions of years, waiting for those who would think differently. But the truth was more complex than any of us had imagined. The massive fleet now surrounding us wasn't just here to help. They were here to offer choice. Through our neural interfaces, we received images of countless worlds, countless civilizations that had faced the same moment we now faced. Some had joined the gardeners, becoming part of something greater. Others had rejected the offer, choosing their own path. "Captain," I said, my voice shaking as I processed the information, "the crystalline beings. They're not just our observers. They're the ones who refused the choice. They've been trying to prevent other civilizations from reaching this point because they believe the gardener's offer is a trap." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Our clever deception, our wooden fleet that hid technology behind tradition, hadn't just been about outsmarting our observers. We had unknowingly participated in a test as old as civilization itself. But now, faced with the truth, we had to decide. Would we trust these ancient beings who had guided us to this point? Or would we side with those who feared them? Captain Chen stood from her command chair, her expression resolute. "Send word to Earth Command. They need to know what we're facing." But before she could finish the order, our sensors detected a new energy signature building within the crystalline fleet. They weren't preparing to retreat. They were preparing to fight. "Multiple targeting solutions," I shouted as warnings flashed across my screen. "They're not just aiming at us. They're targeting the gardener's fleet." The space around us lit up with weapon signatures unlike anything we'd ever seen, making it clear that the crystalline beings had been hiding their true capabilities as well. As energy beams lanced through space toward both our fleet and the ancient vessels that had emerged to meet us, I realized we had moments to make a decision that would affect not just humanity, but the course of galactic history itself. The true test, it seemed, wasn't in hiding our technology or outsmarting our observers. It was in what we would choose to do with the power we had uncovered. Time seemed to slow as the crystalline beings' weapons fire approached both our fleet and the ancient gardener's vessels. But in that crucial moment, something extraordinary happened. The seemingly wooden hulls of our ships began to resonate with the larger fleet, creating a harmonious frequency that rippled through space itself. The energy weapons meant to destroy us simply passed through as if we existed in a different layer of reality. Captain Chen's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "It was never about the technology," she breathed. "The wooden designs, the ancient appearances, they weren't just disguises. They were teaching us to think in patterns that the universe itself recognizes." She turned to face the command crew, her voice carrying the weight of revelation. "Lieutenant, initiate the resonance sequence we discovered in the Mars ruins. All ships, maximum power." As our fleet responded, the quantum cores hidden within our wooden masts pulsed with increasing intensity. The gardener's vessels moved in perfect synchronization with ours, forming an intricate pattern that seemed to fold space around itself. The crystalline fleet's weapons continued to fire, but each blast was caught in the growing pattern of resonance, transformed into pure energy that our ships absorbed and redirected. "They're not trying to destroy us," I realized, reading the evolving energy patterns. "They're trying to prevent us from making the same choice they made, the wrong choice, the choice to reject harmony for control." The neural interface filled my mind with images. The crystalline being's own moment of decision millennia ago, their fear of losing their independence, their choice to fight rather than understand. But humanity had already made a different choice, even before we knew we were choosing. We had built our fleet not to overpower our observers, but to outsmart them. We had hidden our advances not out of fear, but out of strategic wisdom. We had chosen creativity over confrontation, adaptation over aggression. The resonance reached its peak, and suddenly the space around both fleets transformed. The stars seemed to sing, their light bending in ways that revealed paths between them that had always existed, but that few could see. The gardeners hadn't been testing us to recruit us. They had been teaching us to see. "All ships, hold position," Captain Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the extraordinary scene unfolding before us. "We're not choosing sides in an ancient conflict. We're choosing to be something new." She opened a channel to both fleets. To the gardeners and to our crystalline observers, humanity offers a third path. The resonance patterns shifted, guided by our fleet's quantum cores. Instead of following the gardener's ancient design or the crystalline being's resistance, we created a new harmony. Our wooden ships began to glow with an inner light that was neither defensive nor aggressive. It was inviting. The effect was immediate and unexpected. The crystalline fleet's weapons fell silent as their ships began to vibrate in response to our frequency. The gardener's vessels pulsed with what felt like approval. Through the neural interface, I received not just information but understanding. We had passed the true test. We had proven that evolution didn't have to mean choosing between submission and rebellion. Signal from Earth Command, our communications officer announced. They're detecting changes in space-time patterns across the solar system. Whatever we've done, it's affecting everything. The wooden panels of our ships had begun to transform, not into weapons or shields, but into something that looked almost like living tissue, a bridge between the technological and the organic. Captain Chen smiled, and in that smile, I saw the future unfold. Tell Earth Command that humanity just helped broker peace in a war that's been raging since before our species existed. And we did it not by choosing sides, but by showing both sides a new way to grow. As our fleet hung in space, neither purely human nor fully transcendent, I understood at last why the ancient builders had hidden their greatest achievements behind simple wooden facades. It wasn't about deception. It was about reminding us that the most profound truths often hide in plain sight, waiting for those wise enough to look beyond appearances. The stars continued to sing their new song, and humanity prepared to take its first steps into a universe far stranger and more wonderful than we had ever imagined. In the days that followed, our solar system became something unprecedented in galactic history, a meeting ground between three distinct approaches to civilization. The crystalline beings, who had watched over us for so long, began to shed their rigid formations, their ships gradually adopting more fluid patterns that complemented rather than opposed the natural flow of space. The gardeners shared their ancient knowledge freely, but now they too were learning from our unique perspective. Our wooden fleet, once a clever deception, had become a symbol of something far more profound. Other civilizations began to arrive, drawn by the news of what humanity had achieved. They came not to observe or judge, but to learn and share. Each brought their own solutions to the eternal questions of progress and preservation, power and wisdom. Captain Chen stood beside me on the observation deck of Lunar Command, watching as a group of crystalline ships performed an intricate dance with several of our vessels. The patterns they created in space were neither purely tactical nor entirely artistic. They were something new, a language of movement that spoke of possibilities. "You know what amazes me most?" she said, her eyes tracking the elaborate formation. "We spent so much time trying to prove ourselves worthy of the stars, when all along the stars were waiting for someone to show them a new way of dancing." She turned to me with a knowing smile. "Sometimes the best way forward isn't up or down, but sideways, just like our little wooden ships proved." The Mars ruins, which had started us on this journey, were now being studied by joint teams from all three civilizations. What we had thought were instructions turned out to be more like suggestions, possibilities rather than commands. The ancient builders hadn't left us a manual for advancement. They had left us tools for imagination. Earth itself was transforming, but not in the way anyone had feared. The quantum harmonics we had discovered were being adapted for everything from environmental restoration to new forms of art that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our cities began to incorporate elements of both crystalline precision and organic flow, while maintaining their distinctly human character. Final report from the integration team, I said, checking my neural interface. The hybrid technology we developed for our fleet is being successfully adapted by both the crystalline beings and the gardeners. They're calling it the human paradigm, technology that hides its complexity behind simplicity, strength that doesn't need to show itself to be powerful. The captain nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And to think they laughed at our wooden ships," she mused. "But that's humanity's gift to the galaxy, isn't it? We've always been good at finding beauty in simplicity, strength in subtlety, and wisdom in what others dismiss as primitive." As I watched the continuing dance of ships against the star-filled backdrop, I remembered how this all began, with a fleet that looked like it belonged in Earth's ancient seas rather than among the stars. We had built those ships to deceive, but in the end, they had helped us reveal a fundamental truth. The greatest power often lies not in what you show, but in what you choose to hide. The universe we had discovered wasn't waiting for us to prove our worth through force or flash, but through understanding and innovation. Our wooden fleet hadn't just changed humanity's place among the stars. It had changed the very nature of how civilizations could grow and interact. As the Earth rose over the lunar horizon, bathed in the light of a sun that now seemed to shine with new purpose, I couldn't help but smile. They had indeed laughed at our ancient fleet until they realized humans had built it. But in the end, we had all learned to laugh together, as equals in the great cosmic dance. And somewhere out there, I knew other young civilizations were taking their first steps toward the stars. Perhaps they too would choose to hide their greatest achievements behind humble facades, understanding at last that true power doesn't need to announce itself. It simply needs to be.